Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader, and we're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games they come from, without getting too bogged down in music theory. This week's game is 2001's Gitaroo Man, the tale of a music warrior's fight against the Gravillian Empire, made by one of the more prolific rhythm game designers in the industry. That's right, it's time for another solo episode from yours truly. Peter's actually on vacation. Well, was on vacation when this episode was recorded. And, there is value in going on vacation and deciding you will not do a damn thing. And I am perfectly fine to give him that. Also, just recording this week would not have worked out for either of us to do it together. So, honestly, this kind of worked out in the end. So, what am I doing? What am I playing? How am I doing? What am I playing? You know, English isn't real. I have been playing more Story of Seasons, A Wonderful Life. Literally right before recording this episode, I finally hit year 2 of the game. So I'm married, I have a child. It is not the save file I'm going to carry forward, because I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go start another save file for my personal use. The one that I've been playing has been pretty much entirely for the review, and I didn't really end up marrying who I think I want to marry, and just a bunch of other stuff. So probably going to start that over at some point. This time be a little more not bad at it. Who knows? Maybe. I also pretty much started and finished the visual novel Steins Gate, which we'll actually talk more about that in a couple months. But suffice it to say, hey, it's very good. It's a really, really neat visual novel about time travel and timelines and just a bunch of neat stuff that I'm looking forward to talking about. It's got a pretty good soundtrack, but that's not going to be until like September, so be ready for that, I guess. So we're just going to jump straight into today's game, and that is Gitaroo Man, which was originally released on PlayStation 2 in Japan on June 21st, 2001. North America would get it on February 18th, 2002, with Europe on June 21st, 2002. There is a PSP port titled Gitaroo Man Lives, and it was released in Japan on June 8th, 2006, Europe on September 29th, 2006, and then North America on November 14th, 2006. It was developed by INIS, or INIS, lowercase I, capital N, lowercase I, capital S, and published by Koei everywhere except in Europe, where it was published by THQ. What is Gitaroo Man? It is a rhythm game that puts the player in control of U1, U-1, that's his name. In Japanese, he is referred to as Yuichi, which is a name, but in English, apparently, we legitimately refer to him as U1. Cool. And he's a young boy who has been gifted a magical instrument to be used to fight evil. Now, describing a rhythm game that you have not played, because I have not played this game, describing the gameplay is hard, so we're just going to go by how Wikipedia describes the gameplay. It says, quote, Gitaroo Man is a rhythm game in which the player character, U1, faces against various opponents in musical battles. In each level, both the player and opponent has a life bar, with the player tasked with depleting the opponent's life bar and reaching the end of the song without running out of life. With some exceptions, each level consists of 3 main phases: charge, attack, and guard, followed by the harmony and end phases at the end of the level. During the charge and attack phases, players follow a trace line using the analog stick, upon which red phase bars will appear. By pressing and holding down the button at the start of a phase, timing it to its appearance at the center of the screen, and releasing the button at the end, the player plays music. In the charge phase, successful notes restore the player's health, whereas in the attack phase, successful notes damage the opponents, whilst missed notes will hurt the player. During the guard phase, players must hit corresponding buttons as they reach the center of the screen to avoid attacks from the opponent, taking damage should they miss. Unlike the player's life, which ends the game if depleted, the opponent's life bar indicates the progress of the player. Most levels are split up into different sections, which can have multiple variations on each playthrough, and the player must damage the opponent enough to move on to the next section. Otherwise, they will have to repeat the section until enough damage is dealt. At the end of a level, players play through the harmony phase, which is similar to the attack phase, and keep on playing until the end phase, at which point the player will no longer take damage. So if you got all that, it kind of, from what I can tell, it's very similar to like the Persona dancing games, but not really. And has like line tracing with analog sticks, which sounds awful, but apparently works really well. So who am I to judge? The story of Gitaroo Man. U1 is a young boy without much confidence in himself, constantly picked on by his rival Kazuya and ignored by his dream girl, Piko. When U1 is attacked one day, his dog, Puma, transforms and gives him a magical instrument known as the Last Gitaroo, and taking it, turns U1 into the legendary warrior, Gitaroo Man. With this transformation, U1 is put into conflict with Prince Zowie of the Gravillian Empire, as well as his gladiators, all of whom are equipped with their own legendary Gitaroos. U1 must collect these Gitaroos and make his way to Prince Zowie himself, with a goal of collecting all 8 Gitaroos and becoming the true Gitaroo Man in order to save the universe. And this is where I would ask, what are our experiences with Gitaroo Man? I've never played it. I'm aware of its existence and have been for years. But as we'll get into here in a second, this game's rare. You cannot find this game. And when I looked it up on eBay, it wasn't as expensive as I figured it would be. Because I figured I was going to look it up on eBay while doing research and I was going to get like $250, $300, somewhere in there. I think I found one that was like $70, and that was maybe the cheapest I could find it. Amazon had a copy up for $150. So it's hard to find nowadays, and you're going to have to pay a good amount of money for a copy. That being said, like I said, I've been aware of the game for a while. I think my roommate showed it to me the first time. I have not watched very much gameplay. It is a game that I've always kind of wanted to try, but just have never had a chance or gotten around to it. But the soundtrack is very good. I had only heard a couple of songs from the soundtrack before setting up for this episode, but what I heard while doing a full listen through is fantastic. It's all really good. And the sad part is I really couldn't find any development history about this game. Wikipedia does not have a development section for it. When I look up interviews, I do find a lot of interviews with the game's designer, Keiichi Yano, and you should go look into those, but they were never like about the development of Gitaroo Man. Multiple ones I saw were like his feelings on where the Japanese games industry was in like 2012, I want to say, somewhere in there. One of them from Nintendo World Report, talking about one of his games, which was neat. But Yano is a pretty prolific figure in the rhythm game genre. Gitaroo Man is actually his first game. He was the main programmer and the designer for the game, and it seems like it's considered his most popular, according to a couple of sources. But from there, he is the creator of Osu Tatakai Oendan and its sequel Oendan 2, as well as serving as the director for the cult classic DS title Elite Beat Agents. So those are 4 relatively well-known but obscure cult classic rhythm games in there. And I don't know where he is today. As far as I can tell, he's not working in games. His last credited title, basically everywhere I looked, be it Moby Games, VGMDB, anything, Wikipedia, anything like that, his last credited title was in 2009, and it was the Xbox 360 karaoke game Lips. So, as far as I can tell, he is not making video games anymore. Which is a shame, because I think nowadays there's a lot of potential in modern hardware for putting together, like, really cool rhythm games. I don't know. Now, Gitaroo Man itself was well reviewed upon release. Metacritic of 82 on PS2. PSP version got an 80. Praised for its gameplay, stellar soundtrack. There you go. And the closest to an award I could find that it won, which is not surprising to me, is that IGN awarded it the best PSP music game in 2006, and that's essentially it. And unfortunately, all of this positive attention really did not help it sell very well. It sold a mediocre amount of copies, and one of the reasons for that is because in North America and Europe, they didn't really print a lot of copies of the game. Possibly because I assume it didn't sell great in Japan either. I don't know. But for this reason, PS2 copies of Gitaroo Man were just extremely rare. And they, like I said earlier, they still kind of are. This was slightly alleviated by a reprint in 2005. Though not to a huge degree. Like I said, when I was looking up prices, a copy on Amazon will run you upwards of $150. And it was never re-released on PSN as a PS2 classic or what have you. Ever. So, unfortunately, that is not an option either. Your options, if you want to play Gitaroo Man, are track down a copy of the PS2 version, track down a copy of the PSP version, or emulate it. Otherwise, you're not playing Gitaroo Man. Which is a shame. I think this game could get a bit more of a following if it was re-released today. As mentioned earlier, the PSP version Gitaroo Man Lives, released in 2006. This version adds more difficulty options, as well as a couple new stages, and multiplayer functionality. In fact, I think 2 of the new stages in the game are specifically for multiplayer, which is kind of cool. I don't know how that possibly works, but what a cool idea, I guess. And the composer that we are mostly going to focus on, except there's not really a lot to focus on, his name is Tomohiro Harada. He was born in Japan on May 10th, 1970, and he also goes by the alias Tomzuin H. Tomzuin-H. And his discography is interesting. He does a lot of rhythm games. His first credited game, which is not a game I'm familiar with, but it's a genre that is joked about quite often because apparently in Japan they used to be everywhere. There's a game called Idol Janshi Tsuchie Pai Special, which was a strip mahjong game. That used to be a very quote-unquote popular genre in Japan for a while, I guess, because there are so many of them. But he is also credited as doing music for Beatmania Dal and Gitaroo Man, obviously. He was a mixing and mastering person on Elite Beat Agents, and then there is a massive, massive gap until 2020, when he is credited for doing the music for the indie rhythm game Giraffe and Annika. So I don't know what he was doing in that gap, but it wasn't game music. And for some reason, he was apparently listed as a special thanks in the credits of Ghost of Tsushima. Specifically, even on the OST release, he is listed in the special thanks. And I could not find why, but there you go. And in terms of information on Gitaroo Man's soundtrack itself, it actually features music composed by not just Tomohiro Harada, but Coil, Sadayoshi Okamoto, and Yosuke Sato. And it's not on the Critical 5, but apparently there's also a song that features Keiichi Yano himself as a performer. He is credited as playing the EWI, which I had to go look up what that means. It's an electronic wind instrument. As far as I could tell, it is a woodwind-like thing that is a synth. I actually could not 100% tell what it was, but he's playing it on the track B-Jam Blues, because Yano is actually a musician himself. He actually graduated from the University of Southern California with a major in jazz studies, and he also plays sax, though not on this soundtrack. Apparently he plays sax in Tokyo jazz clubs very often, so that was interesting to hear. Maybe that's what he's doing. I don't know. All right. Enough beating around the bush. Enough beating around the music. Enough rhythm. Let's talk about the 5 critical tracks for Gitaroo Man. The first one is the opening theme of the game. Seemed like a good place to start. This is Soft Machine. This song was composed by Coil. The vocals were done by Sadayoshi Okamoto. And like I said, opening theme. I think it very heavily captures the cartoony, old-school anime feel that Gitaroo Man is kind of going for. Maybe I'm only saying old-school anime because this game is, in fact, still like 20 years old, but... And maybe it wasn't old-school anime back then. I don't fully remember. That being said, this is some J-Rock. This is some J-Rock right there. It does remind me, for some reason, even though the vocals are not exactly spot on for what I think of when I think of this band, it kind of reminds me of some of the work of Asian Kung Fu Generation in a lot of ways. That their vocalist has a lot of a deeper voice, but like this feels like an old school anime sort of, maybe not an OP. I could see it as an OP, I guess. I don't know, but it really, really has that feeling of just something you would watch like on Crunchyroll when it got put on as like a legacy edition. I don't know. It stood out to me for that reason. And another song that stood out to me, mostly because this one is completely different from basically everything else I heard on the soundtrack. Critical track number 2 is Nuff Respect featuring Naki. Once again, this song was composed by Coil. Additional vocals by Naki, as the name would imply. That's Nahki. And honestly, what I think about when I hear this song is I think about some of the stuff in Beyond Good and Evil, which is a game we talked about many years ago that has a sequel that doesn't exist. I don't know. It's really odd. This reggae feeling really gives it a much different feel than everything else in the game. But then you have these synths that give it this neat sort of space travel, old sci-fi theme to them, which is great. And Naki's vocals really kind of make it and give it this very memorable feel to it. I don't know. This is one that I listened to it and it was like, yeah, I kind of have to put this on here, huh? It's good. I like it a lot. But in my opinion, the best song on the soundtrack, by far, and this is the song that actually introduced me to Gitaroo Man. Critical track number 3, this is Born to Be Bone. This one was composed by Tomohiro Harada, so we got one in there. And like I said, this is the song that actually introduced me to the game. I was sent a video of this level in particular, and as far as I can tell, it seems to also be one of the more popular tracks in the game, and I can see why. This song is awesome. I kind of referred to it in my notes as Halloween horror-y Western music. I don't know if it's quite Halloween horror, but it is definitely like goofy little xylophone skeleton feel, and then obviously the Western aesthetic is in there heavily as well. I don't know, it's fun. It's a fun track. I have a good time just listening to this song. I think it is extremely catchy, and again, seeing a video of this level is what made me say, hey, you know what? I kind of want to play this one of these days. And I'm glad that I got to be reminded of it while looking into this game for the show. Critical track number 4. This appears to be a very important song to the game, but in what way, I could not tell you. But critical track number 4 is the legendary theme. The song was once again composed by Coil, and it seems to be, like I said, a very important piece to the game's plot. It's a lower energy piece than what we've been hearing, but it sounds good. Like, there's no guitar shredding like we've heard in a couple of tracks, but I don't know, it has almost this... What I picture when I hear this song is the end of a movie where the credits are rolling as you can see the heroes walking into the horizon at sunset. That's all I can picture. And it fits that vibe perfectly. It doesn't play during the credits. I know that much for a fact because I do know what song plays there. But that's just the feeling it gives me. It has something to do with the final boss, I think, which is a great segue into critical track number 5. This is Resurrection. This song was composed by Coil. It is the music that plays during the final battle against Prince Zowie, which it's a hardcore guitar battle. I wonder if it's supposed to be Zowie. I wonder if it's supposed to be a play on David Bowie. I don't think so, but I don't know. I've been calling him Zowie the whole episode, and I'm not going to stop now. One YouTube comment I think kind of sort of nails how this song sort of comes across is, quote, "This isn't the song that plays during the fight. This song is the fight." And it does sound like a hell of a musical duel, honestly. You've got like this grimier feeling guitar on one side and then like a regular guitar on the other. And I assume that's supposed to be the two characters doing their back and forth. I don't know. But as this is the final boss theme, and as it is a pretty damn good song, I figured it was a great place to end the Critical 5. But of course that does not mean we are done talking about the game music, because we still have the cutting room floor. I have 2 tracks there. The first one just barely did not make it onto the Critical 5. This is Tainted Lovers. This one was composed by Tomohiro Harada. This reminds me of some game's soundtrack, and I couldn't tell you what. It sounds like a boss theme from something. It's intense and awesome, and I really, really like this song a lot. Like I said, it just barely missed the critical 5. Had I had a 6th slot, this would go on it 100%. And the other track on the cutting room floor, this is the song that plays during the credits. This is 21st Century Boy. Once again, one last time, composed by Coil. The vocals of this song were done by Yosuke Sato. This is the credits theme. And yeah, this sounds like an anime ED from 2001. I can picture it in my head without even having to go look up a video. I can feel how this ED looks. That doesn't make sense to a lot of you, I'm sure. But people that have watched older anime, and when I say older, I mean early 2000s, which, oh god, that qualifies. Yeah, this is what it felt like. Which is pretty good. I like this song a lot. It's pretty good. So all I'll never forget about Gitaroo Man. I mean, I don't have a lot to not forget. I would like to play it one day. Maybe one day I will play Gitaroo Man. Maybe one day Koei, who I assume still owns it, should re-release this game on literally anything. You know? That would be kind of cool. But yeah, there's just not a lot that I can say that I haven't, that I've experienced in this game, unfortunately. But you know, maybe one day. We'll have to see. And that'll actually do it for this week's original sound chat. I'm glad that you tuned in to hear me talk about Gitaroo Man, a rhythm game I have not played that has a lot of cool rock music and a reggae track in it. I'm glad we've come together for that. You can follow me on Twitter at StringPixel, and Peter is at PeteSpeakEasy. You can find the video version of Original Sound Chat over on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel. But if you're just looking for the audio version, the podcast feed specifically, you can find that at anondino.squarespace.com. But you can also find it on all the podcatchers you could possibly think, I hope, including Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Not only do we have the podcast feed on Spotify, you can find all the episodes there, but we also have a Spotify playlist that if there are songs that we have talked about on the show that are on Spotify, they go on this playlist. It is insanely long, too long, honestly. And unfortunately, there won't be any additions this week because Gitaroo Man's soundtrack is not on Spotify. And in fact, seems hard to find anywhere. I was able to find one playlist on YouTube. That's it. Then, when you're done listening to that, you can find us on social media, the show itself, at Soundchat OST, and you can give us feedback and suggestions. I'm doing a couple listener suggestions here in a couple weeks. So we do them. We do them. Hell, the reason I played Steins Gate was because of a listener suggestion. Granted, that listener was a personal friend, but sometimes we do it. We've been doing a good amount this year, so if you have a game you want us to talk about, you should shoot it our way. So who will I be talking about next week? I'll be talking about Sawa, and I'm so damn excited. And Peter will be talking about Mitsuhiro Hikino. I genuinely have absolutely no idea how we're going to pair those two together. I guess sequels? I don't know. But we're definitely going to figure it out, and I'm going to talk about a damn good soundtrack, and Peter's going to talk about a damn good soundtrack, and by God, we're going to music. Anyways, let's play us out. I should not be allowed to do these solo episodes. I didn't find a ton of covers of this game. I did find a few, which doesn't surprise me. It is a niche, obscure rhythm game from 20 years ago. But it is a musical game, so I figured I'd find at least a couple. And I did find a couple of covers of the Legendary theme specifically. I also found one of Tainted Lovers, which was really cool. But the one that stood out to me, because I am who I am, was a fingerstyle guitar cover on an acoustic guitar of the Legendary theme by a user by the name of Tristan Geronimo. And it's good. It feels good, and it felt like it was a good one to end the show with. So please enjoy that. Thank you for listening to Original Sound Chat. We'll see you next week. Take care.